In a dark room lit only by a glowing screen, the young man reflected that the meaning of his life was to seek power in this world. Then the warrior with the fiery mane shouted that he had finally reached the Lord of the Labyrinth, Pharaoh, and announced that his reign was over. He clenched his fists, putting all his time and effort into it, then unleashed a powerful punch, aiming to become the strongest. Kaido was on his knees after defeating the Lightning Lord Pharaoh, and nearby the soldiers were discussing in amazement that the once invincible enemy had fallen. After that, one of the warriors explained that this whole world is a Reborn online game where you have to fight monsters like a dragon and orcs. Meanwhile, the naked fighter confidently declared that he had already become famous in this world, and the crowd around him greeted his words with an excited noise. A clenched fist expressed determination when the narrator mentioned that he started out with the weakest weapon, and now a muscular silhouette confidently strode down the corridor, defeating every boss before the game ended. A man without clothes confirmed logging out, while another, exhausted and holding the device, admitted that he barely made it. Someone fell back in despair, lamenting that his strength had completely failed him. He lay exhausted and remembered that he hadn't eaten properly in about 2 weeks. Then his thoughts turned to death. He knew that he had achieved what he wanted and had no regrets. Soon the young man was anxiously calling for him to wake up and hurry to get ready, while the other person was wondering where he was and who he was. The young man came to and noticed an unfamiliar place, and nearby someone announced that Kanzuya was awake, and a third quietly asked if it was their father. He watched the man with the newspaper and the woman in the apron, realizing that they were his parents, and wondered if this was really their home. After that, he was struck by the presence of running water. He doubted its existence, remembering that he had left the house more than 10 years ago. The young man was shocked to realize that he looked like a teenager when he should have been in his 30s, and the news broke in immediately. The message mentioned the appearance of monsters in the city, but the other person confidently remarked that the Adventurers Guild would be fine. Then the young man turned to his parents with questions, and a fierce eye flashed in the frame, hinting that something might have escaped from the training ground where adventurers gathered for destruction. A giant boar with massive fangs appeared in front of them, and the signature explained its deadly power and the value of these trophies. The girl shuddered in horror, and the young man anxiously asked if there really were monsters in this world. He walked into his room and noticed a school brochure on the table, wondering what it all meant. He then wondered if there was a school in Japan that actually taught swordsmen, mages, and support specialists. The young man thought out loud that if monster extermination required training in this world, then perhaps he was going to enroll in such an institution himself. Someone has put their hand on a book, thinking about the many things that need to be confirmed, and admitting that they don't fully understand why they're here. After that, the boy confidently decided that he could fight as well as in the game where he had previously shown, and vowed to become the king of the fist again. Meanwhile, in the other world, majestic dragons hovered over a vast landscape dominated by a giant mountain. The boy looked in surprise at the other, who was smiling confidently and thinking that it was important to set priorities now that he had learned something significant. He then grabbed his phone to gather information, and realized that the swordsman course was taught at a prestigious adventurer high school with a rich history. The panel explained that Magnitsky Secondary School teaches 3 years of courses: support, healing, magic fire arrows, swordsman strikes and techniques. The man in the VR helmet realized that this world repeats the same settings and skills as the game he played for 3 years, noting the identity of the movements. After that, he fell face down on the bed, complaining that he didn't want to go to school, and wondered if there was any point in attending at all. He lay down, wondering how to check his stats, mentioned calling the icon in the game, and looked thoughtfully at his phone and the sign screen. The young man shouted out the command to open the status, his face contorted with desperate urgency. The guy wondered loudly if the team was different, and shouted different versions of the word status over and over again, while someone else insisted on silence. Then he nervously asked his mother if she knew how to open his status, and she asked if he was referring to the skill table or the game itself. The silver-haired man ordered the dark-haired youth to hand over the documents at the entrance ceremony, and the latter thanked him in agreement. The young man was anxiously wondering what skills he had when someone nearby greeted him with a curious well. The results showed 2nd level stamina recovery, 2nd level swordsmanship, and 1st level firearm proficiency, as well as detailed skill profiling. The young man realized that his weapon skills were too low, and besides recovering stamina, he only had one modest talent, which bothered the 2 people watching. The boy anxiously thought about the low results and doubted whether he would be able to enter high school, while the man encouraged him and advised him to learn new skills at the academy. The brawny fighter savagely slapped the spiked monster, thinking that the title of Fist King seemed unattainable due to his initial skills. Then the young man attracted his father's attention, while the goblin complained that he couldn't defeat even weak monsters and clear the dungeons. He clenched his fist and thought about monsters, dungeons, skills, and magic, doubting his own strength and wondering if he could become stronger. The man reassured the younger, saying that admitting your own weakness is the first step to growth, and accompanied it with a supportive smile. After that, he assured him that he would definitely get stronger, and the other person thanked him in a low voice, clenching his fist tightly. The young man declared with determination that he would definitely get stronger, his eyes shining with a firm determination. Then the man with glasses told the boy to start training in the newly opened gym tomorrow, and the boy was surprised and asked again about the training room. A young listener happily compared the training hall to the game world, and an elderly mentor added that everyone under the age of 15 is allowed to rent weapons for free. Meanwhile, Kaido was calmly drinking from a can, while behind him, a man was violently kicking down a wooden door, and in the distance, someone was scurrying away. The young man looked at the skill sheet while the merchant explained that beginners start with training on logs and usually swordsmen only get sword skills. He examined the wooden bat and noted that he had arrow skills on his chart, although they shouldn't be combined with any other class. Kaido swung his heavy mace in concentration, thinking that getting skills here is not limited to professions, unlike in games. Then the young man decided that by improving his healing magic and skills with the mace, he could get an increase in physical abilities, and with a firm expression on his face, he continued to strike, believing in success. 8 hours later, he was desperately chanting a healing spell, sweating profusely, but the words alone weren't enough to heal his injured arm, and he was confused. He noticed that the blood had stopped, and stared at his hands in surprise, mixed with relief. He could see the wounds healing, but he doubted the skill could restore more, and wondered if it was really healing magic. After 8 hours of practice, he realized that he probably ran out of mana, but he realized that he had been swinging the mace for longer than his stamina allowed, and he still mastered healing. A week later, the young man discussed the possibility of getting a physical boost with his mentor, who warned him not to overdo it. Several men observed the boy persistently hitting a log for more than 8 hours daily, comparing it to last week, when he worked non-stop until closing time. The character, wide-eyed and tense, wondered what drives such perseverance, and in a week he was convinced of the correctness of his guesses. He explained that this world is partly built on inherited game settings, which means that the knowledge gained there can be applied here as well. Then he remembered that he had already mastered the physical ability enhancement that allowed him to swing the mace at full strength for an hour, and decided to raise his weapon proficiency to level 10. He noticed a girl practicing sword strikes, and wondered if it was her father standing nearby, watching their interaction with interest. Meanwhile, the boy irritably said that smashing was boring and suggested carving a sculpture, and another remembered that his father was always playing, claiming that it was in his blood. The girl called the interlocutor strange, to which he only smiled, considering the choice of mace rather curious. She decided that he was only fooling around, even though he looked diligent on the surface, and the other one next to her hesitantly agreed. After that, he noted that only a person with a serious commitment could have such eyes, and smiled with a little admiration. He encouraged her to swing without too much effort and explained that he was going to get stronger, regardless of other people's opinion, and she listened in silence and watched his training. Kaido hit the statue violently with the bat and was annoyed to see that it had collapsed again just as it was nearing completion. Frustrated, the young man fell to the ground amid the rubble, lamenting that he hadn't been able to finish a single piece of work in a week. Then he wondered if his skill with the mace was growing, noticed that he could handle it more easily now, and looking at the boy standing next to him, decided that he had no right to give up. He suggested changing the training method, arguing that it would be easier if you could directly see your status. Suddenly, he recognized someone and exclaimed in surprise that it was the same girl he had met the other day. Meanwhile, the dark-haired man sharply warned her to be careful, and she turned around in confusion at his shout. The girl screamed as she fell backward, and the boy said at the top of his voice that he was going to crush something. Kaido raised a huge mace and struck, causing a massive explosion, and then he was dumbfounded by the force of the blow. The impact knocked a massive wooden beam right in the girl's direction, and she froze in surprise, her eyes wide. Kaido then looked at the mace and was surprised to see that its power and attack range matched the level 5 skill he had just obtained. He was proud to see that his mace skills had grown, and he felt that the training had not been in vain, swinging the weapon with renewed confidence. After that, he awkwardly asked the girl if she was okay, and she just thought to herself that he was really weird, as expected. The ponytail girl introduced herself as Karen Tanya, adding that she would be a third-year student at the first swordsman school starting in April, and warmly greeted Kanzuya. He nervously thanked her, and she, calling him Senior Tanya and promising to help in a difficult moment, blushed at his answer. She confessed that she had wanted to talk to him for a long time, and he asked in surprise if it was really about him. Then he swung the club with force, noting that the interlocutor beats a log every day for more than 8 hours and has already become a local celebrity. They calmly sat down on the bench, where one of them explained that he first used the punch skill before entering high school, and the other was genuinely surprised. He admitted that the skill is usually mastered in 3 years of study, but admitted that this only confirms the value of his hard training. She said that she also needed to improve her skills, and asked if there were free places to practice with the club in addition to the official sites, and he listened carefully to her. Meanwhile, the two men were discussing how one spent his pocket money on buying logs, while the other noticed that they were being purchased in really large quantities. Kaido realized that he couldn't become stronger without funds, and quickly decided to act, and the seller noted that even though the rent is cheap, the costs are piling up. After that, he offered to try killing monsters and immediately attack the nearest creature, and the girl asked what he thought about it when they met several enemies together. She enthusiastically told the guy about the slime nest, located in the woods near the next town. The map showed a list of slime habitats in Shizuoka Prefecture, and the dark-haired character added that since the other one can use a punch, then it is perfect for a fight. The young man remembered how in games he leveled up and earned gold, and then noted that in reality he can even meet horned rabbits. He swung the heavy club excitedly, admiring how exciting the moment he had struck the creature had been. After that, he enthusiastically explained that participating in the club gives real combat experience, skill growth, and an opportunity to earn money, but the older man asked if he really needed it. After 2 hours, the young man sat down to rest on a rock, deciding that he had collected enough slime cores, and decided to return, because it was only a reconnaissance. He noted that he needed a larger and more durable bag, standing by a massive curved branch surrounded by dense undergrowth. The young man froze, and then realized that he was looking at a strange creature, a horned rabbit, darting rapidly through the foliage. Then he realized that he had wandered too deep into the forest, and when he heard a rustle, he swung his club sharply, trying to stop the beast from charging. He noticed the incredible speed of the attack and realized that a vertical strike would be too inconvenient, so he prepared to use another move. Kaido savagely swung his weapon at the charging beast, hitting it, but immediately tensed up as the creature leaped towards him again. He felt his strength completely drained as the horned monster lunged at him again. Kaido swung the heavy club, knowing that it was impossible to counterattack in such a position, and someone nearby was already afraid that they would not be able to help. Kaido writhed in pain as the huge rabbit bit into his side, and then he realized that this wasn't a game, but a real fight. He noted the monster's insane attack speed and realized that without a precise strike, it would be in danger of death. Kaido then swung the massive mace at the flying creature, focusing all his attention and determined to pull it as close as possible. The monster roared deafeningly, and Kaido gasped in pain, trying to keep from falling under the onslaught. At that moment, someone slammed the door shut with a loud cry of terror. Kaido swung the mace with all his strength, shattering the enemy's shield and sending shards flying around from the powerful impact. The young man gripped the club tightly and warned him not to move, and the bird was panting beside him, showing complete exhaustion. He realized that even a moment's delay would have cost him his life as blood spurted from the wound on his back, outlining a dark silhouette. After that, Kaido thought that the world is like a game, but now he needs to completely change his perception, feeling a warm object in his hands. He debated whether to take the horned rabbit with him, remembering what Tanya had said about the possibility of exchanging trophies at the city hall or similar. With delight, he counted up the nearly 100,000 yen he'd earned in a week, remembering how he'd hunted slugs and sometimes rabbits from morning to night, and then turned the loot in to the city council. Now he wanted to get a skill sheet, explaining that this is a thing that allows you to check your mastered skills at home. The young man thanked Sato-san for his diligence, and the narrator noted that he spent another week hunting monsters to save up for this item. A hand placed a skill sheet on the table, explaining that just a drop of blood into the frame was enough to activate it. The girl cheerfully thanked the guy for his help in the administration, and he modestly replied that it was worth thanking them for the last acceptance of items. The dark-haired guy grinned in embarrassment, and someone noticed that he was already famous here, after which they showed a note with data on 20 kilograms of slime a day. The two men cautiously asked the young man if he was really Kazuya, and the latter looked at them in surprise as he adjusted the bandage on his cheek. A youth with a bandage on his cheek nervously recognized his parents and asked what they were doing here while the three people stood silently on the other side of the counter. Then one man demanded the truth from Kazuya, and he explained that he had heard a rumor about a child bringing 20 kilograms of slugs daily, and another asked if he was experiencing financial difficulties. The guy proudly declared that he had defeated all the slugs himself. The woman asked with interest where he got so many cores from, and someone else recognized his arrival. Kaido stood tense and silent as the bespectacled man angrily accused him of lying and claimed that he couldn't handle it. After that, someone called out to Kazuya, but he calmly replied that if they didn't believe him, then fine, and then the scene changed to a quiet and unchanging room. The young man reflected that he was reborn in another world and returned from death, packing a bag, and thought about how his father remains the same. He wondered if he had changed, checked the skill sheet he had purchased, noted the completed grade, and prepared his clothes for tomorrow's entrance ceremony. Meanwhile, the guy realized that it took him less than 3 years to master the skill, and a detailed status was displayed next to it with a list of acquired skills and weapon proficiency levels. In high school, students focused on mastering one skill for 3 years through hands-on training and training sessions. He noted that no one has yet revealed the secret, and realized that in this world, it is enough only to increase your weapon proficiency to get new skills. Kaido unleashed a fierce attack on the monster, thinking that all the knowledge from the game world could be used in this battle. Back then, he thought about the path to becoming the greatest fist master and was determined to grow stronger step by step as the excitement of the entrance ceremony continued around him. The guy nervously asked his mother what she was going to do with all the photos, and she proudly replied that it was her son's great day, and urged him to be patient a little more. He looked up at the towering school building and noted that it was indeed a huge educational institution. Kaido quietly acknowledged her concern, and the other man explained that his father was only worried about him, reminding him of the events of the previous day. The girl warmly congratulated the newcomers on their admission, introducing herself as the president of the school board, and one boy thought that he did not even know about her position before. He confidently stated that there were many challenges ahead of her, and she, in turn, reflected on how much her aura had changed compared to the training ground, and the next 3 years would be crucial. Meanwhile, the figure in the witch's hat explained that through all the difficulties, they would help each other and grow together while a fierce battle unfolded below. The young man inspired everyone to never give up and continue to believe in themselves, promising that everyone will become a strong and reliable adventurer. She expressed the hope that all of them will become heroes who can save the world, and will be loved by everyone, opening their innermost prayers. The young man smiled warmly as the woman bowed slightly, ending the welcoming speech, and the crowd responded with a round of applause. Then one girl confidently made a victory gesture, while the others clapped their hands in surprise and admiration, amazed at her courage. The man introduced himself as Todoroki, the headmaster of the first swordsman school, and asked if everyone knew about the school's skill assessment system. The guy reacted stunned when he heard about the full-time skill evaluator, while the man in the suit explained in detail the process of testing students' abilities over 3 years. After that, the woman introduced Mr. Ujihara, a local appraiser, and said that he would conduct a special inspection for newcomers, inviting those who wanted to come on stage. A young man muttered that the headmaster had started a freshman test, and a dark-haired student doubted that a freshman could have the skills even before class started. An unexpectedly summoned guy asked for a weapon, and the girl standing next to him anxiously agreed to help. The atmosphere heated up as one character excitedly called out Kazuya's name, while another confidently confirmed that the use of school equipment was allowed. A confident woman with long hair stood with papers in her hands, and a young man opposite held a sword at the ready, while an elderly man with clasped hands watched them. The director apologized, explaining that he was only trying to inspire the newcomers, while another elderly person anxiously mumbled that the event was about to start. The woman expressed curiosity about the accuracy of her skill table, and then confidently announced the beginning. preparing to take a step forward. But suddenly, a shadow with a massive weapon attacked the girl with the book in her hands, causing her to react with surprise and tension. The older man burst out laughing loudly, praising the boy for his outstanding strength and swing, before announcing that he would become a celebrity of the school starting tomorrow. An elderly man apologized to Ujihara, noting that the current first-year students were still inexperienced, while a woman nearby was holding a tablet. One man nervously addressed the tall silhouette with words of respect, while the other reacted in surprise and bewilderment. The older man announced a second-level strike skill, causing shock in the audience, while the boy stood silently with his sword while someone remembered that he was still in elementary school not long ago. He doubted that the child is able to use such a skill, expressing strong disbelief. The girl was startled by the high level of the healing spell, while the older man fiercely demanded respect and warned her not to mess with him, and the guy confidently remarked that this was not all. The dark-haired man let out a sigh of relief, while the silver-haired man was surprised by the amount of his abilities, and the pink-haired woman noted the presence of augmentation magic. The confident youth held out his hand with a grin, asking the question of who else in this world could compare to him. The crowd was talking animatedly about a figure with healing, striking, and strengthening magic, while the dark-haired youth was musing about who else in the world could have such powers. The woman then poured tea, expressing surprise that he had already mastered 3 skills, while 2 men watched in confusion and one nervously took sips. The young man thanked her for her support, to which she modestly remarked that all this really caused quite a commotion. After that, the man explained that the principal was busy meeting with other parents, while 2 students were sitting at the table, and one of them doubtfully admitted that something had happened. The boy found out that other parents wanted to talk to Satokuin's guardians about teaching methods and home education, and took it with a slight surprise. The girl mentioned that she allowed herself to look at his skill chart while holding a stack of documents in her hands. She noted that his strike skill had reached the 10th level, while the dark-haired guy doubted it, because before it was only the 2nd, and the blonde man suggested that it was a matter of possession of weapons. The silver-haired interlocutor explained that the skill level was limited to the low accuracy of the weapon, but since the club's mastery had reached the 10th level, now the blow was fully revealed, and both youths listened carefully. He admitted that games do have similar mechanics, and then the silver-haired man started mentioning the director's words earlier. The girl calmly stated that she was going to take advantage of the situation, and a man nearby explained that skill holders can decide for themselves whether to attend the academy. The young man then firmly stated that he wasn't going to go to school, and his serious gaze clearly showed his determination. He added that he wanted to become stronger and defeat any monsters on his own, but someone called out to him with a hint of concern. The girl also noticed that no one becomes strong completely alone, speaking confidently and calmly. The interlocutor acknowledged that he had done a great job and achieved skills, but stressed that the path of development is still far from complete. The woman explained that she would like both boys to go to school and meet different people, and they listened to her words with attention. Meanwhile, a voiceover showed a school building with a clock, and a voiceover reassuringly remarked that getting stronger is always allowed. 2 boys and a girl were standing at the entrance to the building, and one said they would talk to the principal first and then go home. Another advised to be careful on the way, after which one answered quietly, and the girl promised to meet him at school. He offered to discuss it with her father when they got home, and she quietly acknowledged that she understood. The cheerful girl asked if they wanted to go for a walk together, and the guy sincerely apologized for everything that happened that day. Then he awkwardly rejected her words, and she explained that her surprise was sincere, because what happened to her was a real shock. The girl asked quietly if he was going to come to school after all, and there was a faint hint of concern in her eyes. Then he admitted that he didn't know yet and was going to discuss everything with his parents, adding that he wanted to use the time to become stronger, and she listened in silence. The young man noticed that he could hardly cope even with a one-horned rabbit, and was worried that school might take too long. Afterward, he reflected on how desperate people were to learn new skills, realizing that 8 hours of daily training for a month was simply impossible for most people. Then the girl seriously said that there are some things that simply cannot be mastered, no matter how hard you try. The young man explained that the academy spends 3 whole years just mastering a single skill. He then forcefully lowered the massive weapon and clenched his fist, acknowledging that even hard work doesn't always bring the desired result. The girl happily called him and showed him the direction to her house, and he apologized and confirmed her words, after which they agreed to meet again at school. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to a house in the night, where Kazuya hesitantly agreed after being asked a question. The young man showed the skill sheet to the man at the table, explaining that he had bought it with money earned from slime, and asked if he believed his story. The man admitted that he still can't believe how someone managed to gain so many skills so quickly in such a short time. Then the guy with glasses said that for a month in a row he hit a block for 8 hours, and another interlocutor doubtfully clarified whether this was all he did. The man expressed concern for the younger one, noting that he gave up games and started hunting slugs, as if he had become a different person. In a tense conversation, one of them questioned the authenticity of the skill sheet, and the other apologized, admitting that it was difficult for him to believe and accept it right away. Then the other man insisted that he wanted to see it for himself, and the young man nodded quietly, agreeing to listen. At the entrance to the Zukogen field, the security guard at the car asked the driver to show his ID. The man confirmed his identity and showed his graduation certificate from the adventurer school, while another inquired with interest what the document was as he prepared to open the gate. Then they explained that hunting monsters in these lands requires at least one certified maintainer, and the guy realized that amateurs can't fight slugs on their own. The gate began to open with a long creak, and the dark-haired boy promised to be more careful, while a nearby voice happily announced that the passage was open. At this time, one of the passengers exclaimed with delight, admiring the breathtaking view of the endless landscape with a giant tree in the distance. They arrived at a forest clearing, where one of the men told the youth to wait while he and his father prepared their equipment. Then the boy noted with disbelief that he hadn't expected to see such a place, and nearby the dragon looked up in surprise. The girl was surprised when the boy asked her if she was ready, and then showed the screen, explaining that here he could level up much faster. One of the armored warriors questioned Kazuya's confidence and relying only on the sword, while the other stood behind in silence. After that, Kaito admitted with concern that the barrier looked almost impassable, and nearby he was advised to always be fully equipped for fights with monsters. The man remarked that the standard was to fight with a gun, and defiantly asked what could be achieved with a sword alone, while observing the preparations of the others. Then Kaito strongly urged him to move on, although the other warned him to be careful, and the tension between them increased significantly. The group moved through the forest with extreme caution, and one of the soldiers ordered Kazuya to hide and keep quiet when a monster appeared. The experienced warrior instructed the younger to hide his presence as much as possible, and then finish off the enemy with a single blow at the moment when he lost his vigilance. A man in armor with a fur collar called out loudly to Kazuya, checking to see if he was listening, while another silhouette retreated into the depths of the forest. Then he noticed faint footsteps nearby and reported that they had been followed for some time, causing surprise and alarm among the companions. The fighter warned that there were about 4 enemies and all of them were full of deadly intent. At that moment a low growl was heard around the area. The 2 armored warriors stiffened as 3 battle wolves charged out aggressively in front of them, and one of the men remembered running into them back during school training. The battleship opened fire on the charging beast, but it barked and moved so fast that the gunner could hardly keep up. Then the young man shouted not to shoot, but the gunman with the rifle sharply replied that this was not a training battle, and somewhere in the distance he shouted Kazuya's name. He focused to the limit and moved swiftly, thinking only of improving his swordsmanship. Meanwhile, a calm figure met the snarling wolves head-on, and everyone watched in amazement as a single movement caused them to falter. The youth with the blade spoke to the looming beast, cautiously asking if it was going to eat it. Then he grinned defiantly, noting that his enemies had never attacked him so openly before. Then the man realized that the monsters perceived them as prey, and realized that a fight to the death was ahead, when a new attack fell from above. He declared that this was a fight for their own lives, and braced his muscles for the fight. Then the young man with the sword noticed a movement behind him and whirled around, surprised to see the source of the sound. He carefully positioned himself in front of the snarling mandrakes, gripping the hilt of his blade tightly as he prepared for the inevitable clash. At that moment, the monster roared so that the ground shook. One of the fighters shouted for Kazuya to run, and the other realized in horror what danger was in front of them. Meanwhile, Kaito found himself face to face with a giant plant monster that roared and called for allies, while the ground beneath his feet shook from heavy blows. One of the armored warriors abruptly said that they should retreat immediately, because against such a large number of creatures, they have no chance. But Kaito, using his increased physical strength, rushed forward, and his companion was stunned to note the incredible speed of the opponent. Then Kaido's blow landed on the giant creature, and the force of the blow spread through the air in powerful waves. The bespectacled man called out to Kazuya, asking if he knew what was going on, and Kazuya was already standing in front of a huge dragon rising from the ground. Kaido whirled his heavy mace to fend off the incoming beasts and thought about how to find a way to crush them all. He remembered that the best way to win was to hit the enemy before they fully appeared, and reasoned that 2 powerful bash attacks should be enough. Meanwhile, the 2 armored fighters met a huge grizzly bear, whose menacing roar pierced the air, causing one of them to groan in pain. The man in the fur collar and his companion were wondering why such a dangerous beast was at the edge of the forest when the menacing growl came again. Then Kaido exclaimed in horror, realizing that both he and his ally were under attack, because the furious bear was already raising its paw. He leaped up as the beast lunged forward, and the roaring predator snapped its jaws just below him. At that moment, the monster lunged with renewed force, and one man screamed in horror, while the other desperately admitted that the situation was hopeless. The huge bear, bleeding from a side wound, roared again, claws outstretched in anticipation of the next blow. Someone mumbled in amazement that they didn't believe the grizzly bear had suddenly appeared, and then jerked something in their hands. One admitted to letting his guard down a bit, while the other called out to Kazuya, and in the background, someone was wincing in pain, quietly repeating "oops." Kaido, with a slight bruise and a smile on his face, asked if he was stronger, and the 2 armored warriors were relieved that both of them had survived. The ironclad warrior let out a cry of relief and hugged the youth tightly. Then he asked about his mother, but when he noticed the strange expression on the other's face, he asked with horror what had happened. The man in glasses could not hold back his tears, repeating the words of joy that he was alive, and the young companion with surprise, but also with a slight sense of comfort, allowed himself to be hugged. After that, a close-up shot showed how someone finally recognized Kazuya's strength. Then the shot changed, the 2 were standing in a tight embrace, and one quietly noted how much the other had matured.